Hi, this is Michael James Bingham, CEO, KNCN Technologies. I wanted to share something with you guys. I'm going to read part of my writings one more time regarding why are they still trying to figure out where consciousness comes from. But I've added to this to kind of give you a broader view of my concerns when it comes to the government, Hitler, the pharmaceutical companies, and quote-unquote mental health. I did add to it, so bear with me. I'm going to give you the whole thing again. Not completely, but the whole thing, to the point where it ends, where it explains the ending. And I want you to judge for yourself whether or not you're going to trust the government. I saw President Trump's speech and some of the things they were talking about on his YouTube chat page. I saw it on YouTube. It pulled up. I entered the chat. I put some of my stuff on there. And I already given him the SGI currency. I gave him the arithmetic sequence. Now I have another copy. I have another copy because the Senate in Idaho Falls made copies of it. They gave me back my original papers, and they don't have my flash drive. They didn't ask for my flash drive because they were worried about viruses being put in their computer. So that wasn't given to them. They didn't want it. And I even attempted to give them my flash drive and said you can change multiple things and whatever you want with it, to do whatever you want. But they refused to take it. So SGI currency, it's just something that with this situation, with what Trump is doing by opening up the government and opening up states and everything, what he's going to end up doing is he's going to end up causing the virus to spread again. It's so smart. It's so smart it could find different methods and ways to attack people that we really don't expect. We don't really think about. How could this come about? It's almost like it's thinking ahead of us, kind of like a chess piece, kind of like a computer chess program that has been designed to be so smart that it can calculate the moves of the person that it's battling against. It's like a chess piece, and the only person that has that type of intelligence, or the only God that has that type of intelligence is God. God is always one step ahead of man. That's because man's wisdom is like rags to God. It's not going to work the way Trump seems to think it is. And when you do that, you cause yourself to lean into your own understanding. And in many ways, God's ways are higher than man's ways. You cannot expect to outsmart God. And this, like I said before, this virus is not necessarily from man. Man didn't design this virus. Man manipulated it, but God allowed man to lean into their own understanding, and he allowed man to spread this virus out across the world, and the government did it. And that video on YouTube that the guy was, or on Facebook that the guy was spreading, that I saw from one of my friends, because I don't have Facebook, is it's true. Try that with your Siri. See if the government actually sent out this virus, and it'll give you the date and time that they actually distributed the virus out into the public, and they want you to trust them. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get into my writings. Because we as a people chose to ignore the history of where and whom this understanding of consciousness originated, then also chose to ignore the public who passed down this knowledge throughout history. Because of this, the truth was lost in history's rationale. This is because of the pursuit of Hitler. We have chosen to acknowledge the same as him, by the government seizing the writings of Hitler and his scientists. When America won the war against the Germans and Hitler, they burned all copies they could find of Hitler's publications, of the formulas of his scientists. They moved from house to house, seizing the public's copies. Then they made bonfires and burned them. Not done yet. Okay, give me 1 second. My computer went up a little further than I expected. What they didn't know was that when this was happening, some of the public took grounds to warn others to hide their copies. So some of their books had survived. The reason why I know this is because I was made aware of someone that got an inheritance in my state that has an original copy of one of the books that has his formulas in them. The ones that were meant to be burned. The state that this copy is in governs itself and makes its own laws. This book is evidence against the government, so what they have as a government's top secret isn't a secret at all and can be used in court to overthrow the government. USA. Their power they think they have over the people will be broken. This is because they have violated the Constitution and what it declares about the rights of all Americans to choose for themselves how they live their lives, to make their own choices out of controlling their own decisions through God's design of dynamic distribution. Because of chemical control, spellbinding, dependence on others to think and make decisions for the ones taking them, cognitive impairment, chemical slavery, and its ability to force a lack in desire to depend on one's own abilities, and through this, a force of desire to allow or give others the right of optional guidance to direct one's decision, and to willingly give them control, to make someone feel good about not having to do things for themselves. Laziness. And the fact that the drugs are meant to have others control the individuals by chemically enslaving the mind. The government has brought their end of control to one of forced surrender to the public. The coronavirus has caused God to show his wrath in such a way that the government has already surrendered control to the public. No matter what type of slave you label this decision, government threw out what President Lincoln made into federal law. He made clear that everyone, no matter who they are, is free to choose, and the opportunities of freedom are their constitutional right, liberties, and right to pursue the pursuit of these freedoms. When you enslave the mind, whether it be enslaving someone in chains by bondage or impairing the mind chemically through altering their choices of their own decisions, so others do not feel unsafe, so you are giving others the right to choose for the ones compelled by force. This violates the same rights and liberties of the ones who are compelled to take the drugs. The ones who are compelled are also Americans. Some were born here and others not, but when they are granted their right of passage into freedom, this gives them the same rights of freedom of choice. This is evident by asking the public for their advice and willingness to accept any and every idea in resolving this epidemic. But that doesn't mean that they are going to show their weaknesses of control. They still want to blind everyone by reassuring that they have or are working on a cure. This is a lie because they know they're not there, because they know there can be no cure. I'm sorry, I'm a little hyped up about this because I know I'm telling the truth. All right, so there basically can be no cure found. It is so smart that it is always so smart that it is always multiple steps ahead of their understanding and how it can affect the lives of the public. In many ways, the virus is controlled by God, and the choice in whom it affects and whom it doesn't, and even who lives or dies, is determined by God alone. This is why they are so fearful and don't understand. They are stuck determining how to fight it based off of proven cures of history. But this is new and not determined on the past events, but the future of God's plan and purpose for his coming kingdom on earth. Why do you think we can't control its path of infection or of quick speed? The government listened to Hitler's understanding of how the brain works and realized that they could control their populations by chemical control. This was more of a choice to control the balance of powers between government and the public, and to stop the threats they feared from the public. That they could overpower or overthrow the government because of the Constitution and what the founders of it based American rights, liberties, protections on: the freedom of choice. We are no longer free, as the Constitution declares. In many ways, we are a dictatorship already, but just a hidden one, out of the public's understanding. This is evident in the willingness to provide all Americans with opportunities, but to ignore the opportunities of most. And that's what Trump is doing right now with my SGI currency. This is suppression and not real freedom. We cannot grow as a nation or as an economy when we control who can prosper and who suffers and dies. Wealth is opportunity, and financial or conscious control of the mind makes our views of freedom not actual freedom, but makes us more dependent on the system than God. This is one reason why our economy has crumbled before our very eyes, because a house divided amongst itself does not stand. They know that government works, protects, and serves the public. But to work for them and not find permanent solutions, this would mean eventually the public would find a way to take back the power the government has over the people. Eventually, this ideology spread over many countries, and all because of Hitler in America. This war was not about helping the Jewish people find security from the horrific tortures of Hitler. It was about bringing back his knowledge for their own gain. What they didn't acknowledge was the severity of the consequences of the psychoactive properties that would create repetitive criminal behaviors out of their own people. Depending on the individual, the drugs' effects would end up causing them to look as though responsible for themselves, and would take the focus off the government and on the defendant. So they ignored the responsibilities of what they chose to do. The government knew that if they could get many on the drugs, they could keep the economy booming by way of Medicaid and Medicare. This influence would show they cared, but was only showing a translucent focus for their views and purpose for this false trust. This ideology the government was aware of was to encourage the public's faith in the government. But by doing so, Americans turned their trust in God to a disingenuous chemical force of dependence over the public. They know they also could use psychological manipulation as a way through the media as influence control, by telling them that these drugs would help them feel better about life and would help them manage their family lives. They would become better people, but this twist of the truth is what has corrupted our country and caused us to separate ourselves from God Himself. We are a nation addicted to drugs as a coping solution for our problems. Rather than trusting in God, these drugs have caused us to continue to live in and trust the lies of the flesh and rely more on false and twisted ideologies of reason rather than the healer himself, God. We need to come back to the conscious wisdom of God. This is why we will all fall as a nation, because we have turned our back on our trust, faith, hope, and true understanding of God, meaning love and its real meaning and purpose for all of us. The government and the pharmaceutical companies use mental health and therapy as a way to monitor their users to see if they are still on the drugs. This method is not for taking over or talking over your problems as if they want you to improve emotionally or rationally. They use this method as a way to ensure that they are continuing to make money off the drugs. If they lose you to other methods, they lose money. Remember, this is a business, and businesses are not in a position to lose customers to someone else. There are reasons why their drugs are so effective. They keep you naive and dependent on them and on the people who monitor the patient to ensure control and for them to lead your understanding. They don't want you to be able to think for yourself. If you are able, you will have an epiphany and realize the lies they are spreading and will sue or make known their secrets. This worries them because what hides in the dark becomes visible in the light. So what reveals the hidden motives of people? The truth, the light. Also, what murks out of the dark then hides when secrets start to come to light. People who are afraid and shameful. People who love evil and those who prey on the weak at heart. They just twisted the truth for the public's viewing. We say the public will become healthy-minded if they willingly take them. This is also how Hitler manipulated the Jewish people, by telling them these drugs would ease their pain. This is why we are born with many emotional issues. The drugs are transferred from parent to parent, passed down from generation to generation through the blood, the semen, and the female eggs. These formulas were biological and genetic research done by many scientists. This was Hitler's plan. He knew he wasn't going to be here forever and needed a plan to ensure that his motives would continue even after he was gone. Stop it, Bella. So he had America continue for him. So that's basically it. That's basically the situation. I did show you where I added, but I wanted to continue the whole writing so you can get the full picture of what I'm saying. I'm very confident in what I'm saying. And this stuff makes me so intensely focused. I have autism, so this kind of stuff, it's truth. And I'm very confident about this. So be careful, be aware of the government, because I provided them an option and a solution for all Americans, for the whole globe, to end poverty. And the solution actually entailed them still being able to stay in power, still have that power and authority. And it provided them a way to be able to track the currency, to track the currency securely. As far as a lot of different other methods that I came up with and approaches. So, you know what? I've talked about it on previous videos, guys. I've talked about it. Watch those videos, and you'll see what President Trump is doing, and then you'll see what I offered him, and then you'll see, because I don't have an education, because I was robbed of my education because of what mental health did to me and what they did to my mind, where I wasn't able to learn the way that I needed to because of the suppression of the drugs. It's not my fault that I've never got an education, and I really want to, but because of the coronavirus, I'm not able to at this point in time because of the restrictions. But when it comes to that, President Trump is so prideful right now because he has an education, that when someone ends up being so much more smarter than him, or basically anybody in government that has found a solution, multiple solutions in resolving multiple problems and issues, he tends to be so arrogant and prideful that he ignores what I'm saying. But I'm going to tell you what, the Bible tells me that I will get an answer. I will eventually be able to have someone take them on and agree to something, to come to terms, to an agreement with me. But that person will act deceitfully, and it won't be President Trump doing it. It'll be the third person in office after Trump. So this is Michael James Bigham, CEO, KNCN Technologies. You all have a wonderful day. God bless you. Bye.